when the cost of college could be paid for by your summer job and by part-time work during the school year. Today, the cost of college is so expensive, you couldn't possibly pay for it by any kind of job you could get in the summertime or a job you can get during the school year. And one of the reasons for that, higher education has just, the inflation of the cost of higher inflation is out of control. And by the way, one of the reasons for that is that we've come up with this idea of loaning people lots of money. And when they have lots of money, the colleges can raise their tuition and government will pay them the loan to pay for it. I mean, if overnight everybody said we're going to give all the college kids in this country that want to go to college a $100,000 loan, guess what's going to happen to the tuitions in the country? They're going to go up. They're going to take all that money and more. And we've got to get higher education to be more competitive, to find ways to teach the subjects kids need and want to learn, to get out of school. And when I went to college, people went in 4 years. All right? Almost everybody. And now and then you heard people went in 3.5 years. Now it's 6 years, 5.5, 6 years. Now there are some reasons for that too. One is because K through 12 isn't doing the job they need to do. And we know the reasons why that's happening. And that's because we're bowing too much to the teachers' unions and not supporting our teachers and parents and kids. I want to help young people in college with the best loans and lowest interest rates we can possibly afford. But I also want to make sure that we get colleges to start competing and to be much more effective in bringing down their costs. I probably shouldn't tell this. My staff is running for the door. They're screaming. But when I was governor of my state and we faced a really tough budget crisis, I reduced, as I recall, I reduced the funding for University of Massachusetts and our other state colleges by about 10% to make sure we could make our ends meet. And I sat down and met with the chancellor of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and I thought he was going to really, tear my head off. And he looked around, he says, "Governor, don't quote me on this." That's why I said I shouldn't tell you. He said, "Don't quote me on this, but thank you." And I said, "Why do you say thank you?" And he said, "Because I've been trying to get rid of some departments and work that goes on around here at the university for years, and you finally give me the excuse to get rid of some things we don't need. And so we need to make sure our colleges and universities are teaching kids what they need. We get them economics, hold on to costs." I will do my best to help because I want our kids to go to college, but I want them to do it in 4 years, and I want to make sure that we have them prepared so they can go to college in that period of time and get the degree they need. And I want to make sure when they come out of college, they have a job. And that's a good paying job that's up to their skills. Thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, look, there's a microphone behind you, so I don't even have to. Look at that. It's a hearing from nowhere.
Regulatory agencies have seemed to proliferate under this administration. For example, the TSA. I think that's a lot of concern to many people in our country. What can we do about it?
Yeah, regulatory agencies. It's an amazing thing what happens in government. In any enterprise you're familiar with, they have competition. And if you got a job in a private enterprise of some kind, sometimes you wish there wasn't competition because competition can put you out of business. And so you wish you could find a way to always stay ahead of the competition, but it's tough. There is no competition for government. And so they can just get bigger and bigger and bigger and tax you more and more and more, and there's nothing you can really do about it except elect people like me that'll fix it. And this goes on. Let me tell you just a story about how big government has become as a result of just being government. Back in the Second World War, we commissioned 1,000 ships a year. And we had 1,000 people in Navy purchasing. 1,000 people. Then in the then during the Ronald Reagan years, John Lehman was the one that told me this story, Secretary of the Navy. He said during the Reagan years, when he was Secretary, we commissioned 15 ships a year. And Navy purchasing had grown to 4,000 people. Then he said today, we commission 9 ships a year. And Navy purchasing has grown to 24,000 people. He said, when we developed the Polaris missile system, as you know, a submarine-based nuclear launching system, very complicated technology. He said, we did that in 4 years. The F-22, he said, it's taken us 24 years. Has taken us 24 years. And he said, it's less complicated than what we did back with the Polaris submarine missile. Government gets large. And so we have to pare it back. And regulators, the number of regulators has grown by well over 100,000 during the Obama years. And the problem with that is that they all have to regulate something. Find something to regulate and make it more and more difficult, particularly for small business. When Dodd-Frank got passed, over 2,000 pages of banking regulations, I was with the head of a big bank in New York. He said, we have hundreds of lawyers helping us implement Dodd-Frank. And I said, what happens at the community bank level? A bank that has maybe 50 employees, they can't afford hundreds of lawyers. Community banks are getting crushed. Why is it small banks aren't making loans like you expected to small business? Because they're scared to death. They're overwhelmed with regulators and regulations. We have to recognize that the purpose of regulation and regulators is not just to find the bad guys. That's an important purpose. But there's another purpose, to encourage industry, to encourage development, innovation, work, jobs. They don't understand that. Too often, I think government doesn't like you very much.
It was the large
I like you guys, all right? I like private enterprise. I know I'll give it some more. You have comments to make. Why don't you tell? What's your comment, and then I'll respond to it if you like.
The large banks that crashed our economy, sir.
Okay, thank you.
They need to be regulated.
Okay. By the way, is that your? Let me make your point. You're absolutely right. We have to have regulation. I'm not suggesting you don't have regulation. All right. I'm not suggesting you don't have regulation. You have to have regulation. And the fact is that the politicians on both sides of the aisle were saying, let's give loans to more people and guarantee them by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Let's give them more loans to people who we know can't possibly pay them back. That's what caused the crisis that we have. And by the way, the big banks weren't big in the mortgage business. You know what? It's my turn to speak. You've had your turn. Just hold on, my friend. Let's let somebody else speak. All right? And so the big banks. All right. Hey, listen. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae did help cause this problem. Let me tell you who did. The big banks did, the small banks did, the mortgage banks did, Freddie Mac did, Fannie Mae did, Congress did, the President did, the Secretary of Transportation did. A lot of people did. A lot of people are responsible for what happened in the housing market. But you know what? The right answer is not to, by the way, the risk is still there. The right answer is, in America, is to have regulation that's updated, that's streamlined, that's modern, that encourages community banks to be successful. The Dodd-Frank bill has not hurt one big bank. The only banks that have been hurt by Dodd-Frank are little banks. Your friends, the little banks are hurt. The ones that you're unhappy with, the big banks, they're smiling from ear to ear with Dodd-Frank. We got to fix it and help the smaller banks get back to business.
When you left the race 4 years ago, and I'm really happy that you're back to stay. We have a president who thinks nothing of taking lavish vacations while the majority of Americans are hurting so much, and that's a terrible image. And we have a president who makes recess appointments, and we have a president who circumvents Congress by hiring his own czars that aren't responsible. So will you go after him, and will you bring that up as much as possible? And will you do something about that when you change the image of the office? When you get
Thank you. I never imagined that I'd be running for president of the United States. I have to tell you, when I grew up as a boy, when I was a little guy, I wanted to be a cop. But as I got, like 10 or 12 years old, I wanted to be an auto company executive. My dad was in the auto. I wanted to be at a car company, and probably from from 10 years old on to 18. And actually, after my first year of graduate school, I went to work at Chrysler in the summer, thinking maybe I'd go to an auto company. I never imagined I'd be doing this. I can't imagine an honor that would compare with becoming president of the United States. And if I had that honor, I can't imagine doing anything besides spending every waking moment thinking how I can help the American people. If I get to be president, I will make my job finding out how I can help getting more jobs for all the people of our country. I don't know. I mean, I haven't been president, so I don't know exactly what it's like, of course. But 90 rounds of golf, there's just no way I could do that, all right? I mean, now with the American people feeling the stress that the American people feel, I will go to work to do everything in my power to get America right. My guess is the first 100 days will make all the difference. And for me, this is a question of getting America back on track and saying, how do we make sure we create the economic engine that creates jobs again, as we've known in the past? How do we help middle-income families? How do we get government less out of the way and encourage in the private sector where we get our jobs to thrive and expand? And how do we get government out of our lives? Government is too intrusive, too big, too taxing, too demanding. We need to return to an economy and to a people that are driven by free people and free enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Romney. You gave away approximately 16% of your income last year, I think it was, to charity, which you should be incredibly proud of. The other side seems to prefer to give away other people's money. How would you go about encouraging more private charity as opposed to perhaps government dependency?
Well, you know, everybody makes their own decision with regards to their charitable contributions and where they want to devote their charity. That's what I like about charity, by the way. We choose those things that we think have the greatest impact. And instead of government making its choice, we make our own choices. And I can't tell you that I'm going to tell the American people where to give their money, or that I would have government do that for them. I would rather have people make their own contributions to charity. When I came in as governor in my state, I saw that we as a state were giving money to charities. And I thought that was unusual. Why shouldn't people give money to charities and government stay out of it? And one of the charities that we gave money to was one, as I recall, my wife was chairman of the board. And I proposed cutting our contribution to that charity to zero. So that created some challenges at home. But it comported with my view that charities should be funded by individuals. And we do a lot of things in government that I like, but that I'm just not willing to go to China to borrow money to pay for. So, for instance, I like PBS, I like Big Bird, and Bert and Ernie and all that. But we right now, we put